Today we're going to be going through the second book of Dante's Divine Comedy, which is his Purgatory. And as we had previously mentioned, Divine Comedy is one of the most acclaimed works of all time, and that doesn't just apply to the Inferno, but also to the Purgatory. There is quite a lot of unique value in the Purgatory. We see the value of the Purgatory in three specific ways. First, as it is a practical handbook for combating sin. Second, as it is an opportunity to learn from some historical figures. And then finally, as it is an opportunity to appreciate the beauty with which Dante writes, especially in his imagery. And as a reminder, if you're looking for a deeper discussion of that beauty, you can check out our previous discussion of the Inferno, where we talk about the necessary historical context for understanding the Divine Comedy, a recommended translation as you go through the Divine Comedy, and then also who the appropriate audience is for this work. And as a brief note on age appropriateness, there is in fact a quite graphic description in the 23rd canto of Purgatory, about lines 100 and following. So it's just something that teachers and parents might want to be aware of before walking through this with their students. Also, the Inferno introduces us to a woman named Beatrice, who Dante has kind of set up as this pillar of all that is good, true, and beautiful. And this continues in the Purgatory. We see her often pop up as someone who is, again, the driving factor behind Dante and Virgil's trek through, as well as even in some cases a saving force. And this idea of a saving force not only being on Christ also shows up when Dante discusses Mary, the mother of Jesus. And there are three other unbiblical views which readers might want to be aware of before going through the Purgatory. First, Dante believes in pastoral celibacy, which is the belief that pastors and priests should not be married at any point in their lives. And he also believes in a rejection of remarriage in all of its forms, whether as a result of divorce or as a result of death. And so the medieval mind was very much opposed to both of those. Dante also believes in prayers for the saints and baptism of the dead. And this actually plays out in a story that Dante tells about a pope named Gregory I who prayed for a very just Roman emperor, at least in his opinion, so that this Roman emperor was actually raised from the dead in Dante's telling, so that Pope Gregory could baptize him, and thus this emperor was able to be saved and sent to purgatory for that purpose. And then finally, purgatory in general, the concept is often a problem for many Protestants and evangelicals, specifically because it downplays or seems to downplay the power of Christ to save to the utmost. And Dante describes something which kind of aligns itself with this view of purgatory when he describes those who have died but came to faith right before their death, whether on their deathbed or sometimes even in their dying breath, crying out to Christ, and says that these people have more time that they will spend in purgatory than those who perhaps were Christians for the majority of their life. And Jesus himself refutes this throughout the Gospels, specifically in Luke 23, when he is speaking to the thief on the cross, who comes to belief in Christ in his last dying moment. Jesus says to him, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." These many differences aside, Dante's Purgatory does in fact have a lot to teach modern readers and even us Protestants and evangelicals. As previously mentioned, the Purgatory can serve as an excellent handbook for combating sin. The way that Dante details how the repentant confront their own sin throughout the levels of purgatory can help us understand effective ways for us to push back against our own sin in our own lives and against our own human nature. One example of this is when Dante is describing the level of the gluttonous. He describes an image where these people who have been consumed by gluttony or consumed by this desire for pleasure are actually being pushed down into the ground, into the mud. And they do this not as some sort of weird punishment, but actually to remove the focus from themselves and to recenter themselves on Christ and to entirely, as much as possible, dispel this desire for pleasure and remove it from the primary place it took in their life and put Christ there where he belongs. There are also a number of stories that Dante tells about historical figures and his and Virgil's interactions with them, which really have an opportunity to lead us into virtue the more that we understand them. One of these is Dante's meeting with Cato, who was a virtuous Roman, and for all intents and purposes, Cato should have probably been in the Inferno, in the realm of the virtuous pagans who didn't really have the opportunity to come to Christ. But for some reason, Dante puts Cato in Purgatory, certainly at the bottom, guarding the gate, but it means that at some point Cato will actually be able to reach paradise. And this comes as a surprise to any of the medievals who would not have understood why this was the case. But I think we can see this brief story as a reminder, perhaps, of the fact that we don't know who's actually going to be in heaven. We have no idea who's going to end up there. It's been said that upon arriving into heaven, everyone will be surprised by three things. The first is that they'll be surprised by who is in heaven, who has made it. The second is they'll be surprised by who is not in heaven, those who we thought might be there or should be there but aren't. And then the third is that we'll be surprised that we've made it. And this story from Dante about Cato reminds us of that first surprise. Before closing, I want to provide a brief structure for Purgatory. If you remember when we finished the Inferno, Dante and Virgil have just exited through the base of hell and are now at the bottom of the mountain of Purgatory. And throughout this book, they're going to walk their way through each of the levels of Purgatory, from what Dante in the medieval mind would consider to be the most separating sin from God, which is pride, through that which is least separating from God, at least in their view, which is the sin of lust. And so as Dante and Virgil move through this, you should note that Dante in each level is being purified by fire, which is actually a biblical image that we find in 1 Corinthians 3. And every time that someone moves from level to level, there is a loud shout and an earthquake which actually accompany that transition from one level to the next as they move closer to God. A final thought to end on, a helpful application that I've found for myself from Dante's Purgatory is that we should not dwell on our suffering in this life, but rather on what is to come. When we do so, when we focus on eternity, we are able to serve God's kingdom purposes so much better, and to further His work in this world. And I think that's really what Dante's Purgatory is trying to help us along. This has been Book 2 of Dante's Divine Comedy, The Purgatory.